The Minnesota Vikings have brought joy and misery to the Vikings fans for many years. At the Skol Purple Podcast, we just want to see the Vikings party with the Lombardi. Join us for analysis, interviews, laughs, and much more. It's the podcast by Vikings fans for Vikings fans. The Skol Purple Podcast starts now. Here's your host, Carson Schubert.
Welcome into the Skol Purple Podcast as we are joined by Dash from Big Dash Knows once again as we preview the Giants matchup. Dash, first of all, how are you doing here today?
I'm doing very good, man. And you know what? We meet again. We absolutely meet again. I didn't see it happening.
Yeah.
But we're here.
Yeah.
We're here.
Here we are. Who would have thought it was a playoff preview when we met a few weeks ago? Right. And I'm sure we'll get into it, but it seems like your team is a little bit more healthy than the last time that these two teams played, which seems like is probably a pretty significant thing for you guys when you come to US Bank Stadium on Sunday. So looking forward to talking about that. Want to thank everybody for joining us. Make sure to go ahead and like, subscribe, send your comments to us. Tell us what you think about this matchup in the comments section, and we'll be sure to give you some feedback if we find it necessary. And of course, friendly banter is always appreciated in the comments section. So, but Dash, let's go ahead and get into this matchup. As I mentioned, I think that's the biggest storyline for your Giants coming in is all these guys coming back, the Xavier McKinneys of the world, the Adoree Jacksons of the world coming back for you guys, Azeez Ojulari coming back as well. Yep. Some of those guys coming back for you guys in this matchup just seems to be a huge deal, especially when you are facing an offense like the Vikings offense, the top 10 offense in some categories. And I know that you guys gave up a lot of points the last time, but even then, 24 points, I think it was at the end, 24, 27 maybe.
That was exactly
27. Yep. 27-24 was the final there. So overall, I mean, you got to be pretty pleased that you only gave up 27, I would say, the last time that these two teams met. And now that you get those defensive pieces back, do you feel a little bit more, even more confident going into this matchup?
Yeah, I think across the board, I think the confidence level is high. Obviously, like you said, Xavier McKinney and Adoree Jackson are two big pieces that we didn't have the first time we played against you. And we saw Justin Jefferson go off, I believe, like 12 catches, almost like 130 yards. Hockenson was another guy that went off. And I told you before, I said we have trouble guarding tight ends. And, Hockenson was one of those guys that went off. So I'm thinking with the addition of McKinney, I think he helps out, in being able to try to slow down Hockenson. And then Adoree Jackson, again, I said it before when I was on here, is you don't stop Justin Jefferson. You don't stop him. You just hope that you can try to contain him as much as possible and then tackle him once he catches the ball. That's the big thing with Justin Jefferson because you know what? He's the best receiver in the league right now. No doubt in my mind about that. But yes, definitely, Xavier McKinney, Adoree Jackson, those guys are big. But like, again, Azeez Ojulari coming off the edge. And I know you guys have some injuries on the offensive line. Is your right tackle coming back? Is he going to be back in time? I know the center.
Nope, he is done for the season. And wow. I would put Garrett Bradbury's status for Sunday as doubtful.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So you're talking about your third string center for the Vikings and your second string right tackle. And wow. I think that's just interesting. Like you guys are getting some of these returners, and yet now the Vikings, that's something that's changed for the Vikings since we last played. We lose half of our offensive line, even though I think Schlottman may have started that game when we played you guys. Maybe Bradbury was out of that game, or maybe he got injured in that game. I can't remember, but so it's a huge deal. And I know it seems like Oli Udoh, who is our backup right tackle, he played pretty well on Sunday, but let's be honest, the JV roster that the Bears have probably doesn't mean much getting stops against some of those guys. And when you face Ojulari and Thibodeau, that's going to be a much taller task.
Yeah. It's funny too because I got into a kind of a argument with another Giants fan over that tackle, the backup tackle, because I didn't know anything about him really, and he kept talking about how good of a game he did. And I actually went back and looked at the tape, and the guy did pretty good. Actually did pretty good in that game. Like
Yeah.
you said, it was against Chicago, but Chicago pretty much is holding on to that number one draft spot now. Was were they really playing their hardest? I don't know, but again, his footwork looked good. He held up pretty well. So you know what? Maybe you have a guy that can step up. Um, and
Yeah.
to your point, as far as the health goes, man, yeah, we went through it all through the season with a lot of guys being down, from the receivers to the offensive line. Saquon was banged up, but played through it, but his production had went down as well. And it seems like right now a lot of the guys are getting healthy. Bredesen on the offensive line is back as well, and Evan Neal has had a couple of games back under his belt since he went down. But that's as far as the Winkling goes, that's my issue there. My question mark is going to be Evan Neal and how Hunter plays against him.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it was huge for the Vikings to give Zadarius Smith the week off last week, and I think maybe he had some personal things that he was taking care of last week, but it was probably good anyway because he was probably going to be held out just because he's been kind of slowed by some injuries towards the
Okay.
second half of the season. The first half of the season, like there was talks of Zadarius Smith being in Defensive Player of the Year talks, and then kind of things started to slow for him with injuries, and it seems like that's kind of been the story of the last few years of his career. But if he's healthy on Sunday, and then you have that pairing with Danielle Hunter, I think that could be a tough day for Evan Neal, as you mentioned. I know Andrew Thomas has been really solid for you guys on the left
Yeah.
side, right?
Yeah.
And then it's been Neal that's kind of been the guy that's struggled. And you're kind of, if I remember correctly, that you're kind of hoping that Neal takes that step next year to Andrew
Yeah, we
Thomas
hope
level.
so. We hope
Yeah.
so. Yeah, because being the seventh overall pick, you would like him to be a little bit more polished. We knew, especially coming from Alabama. Alabama likes a certain type of tackle. They like the guys to be bigger and things like that. So you always see Alabama linemen, especially tackles and stuff, kind of struggle. A lot of them get pushed inside to play guard in some cases. But we're just hoping that because he is athletic for his size, we're hoping that he can you know hit the ground running going into next year. But hopefully he improves this year as well. I'm hoping he has a good game, especially with Glowinski, get that communication back and get that feel back. But if you look at him, if we're going to talk technically, it's all about his drop steps. He tends to lean, and he has issues with speed rushers. So hopefully they let him set the way he wants to. Hopefully he can avoid reaching because he has been on the ground a lot this year, more than we would like to say. But
Yeah,
like I said
usually if
again,
you're
yeah,
usually if your offensive lineman's on the ground, that's probably not a good sign.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to see if the Vikings can get pressure on Daniel Jones, even though I think we talked about this the first time, where Daniel Jones has some success is being able to move outside the pocket and maybe escape from some of that pressure. So the Vikings maybe are going to have to try and kind of put the bumpers on him in the pocket, kind of keep him in the pocket and try and make him throw from the pocket, even though he's been fairly successful from doing that as well this season. I guess one thing, I don't know if we talked about this much on our last episode together, Dash, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what Mike Kafka and Brian Dable have done for Daniel Jones this season, because it seems to me like he has taken a step this year that maybe if it was under a previous coach or a different coach that he may not have taken. Do you feel like that's a pretty accurate statement, or how would you assess that?
absolutely. Coaching has everything to do with it. When Jason Garrett was here with Joe Judge, they were so concerned about the turnovers off of his rookie season, because he threw 12 interceptions. Like everybody talks about his turnovers in reality, he had 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions his rookie year, which is not the worst. We've seen rookies throw way more than 12 interceptions, but the issue was his fumbling. But when they went with Joe Judge and Jason Garrett, they focused on the turnover so much that he resorted to not even wanting to take chances. So we saw a shell of himself those 2 years. And then when Brian Dable came along, the first thing he said was he wanted Daniel Jones to play quarterback freely, take chances, and get the ball out. And the way I took it was, I think he was hesitant a lot in those 2 seasons under Garrett. That he would wait till guys were wide open instead of throwing people open and things like that. And you saw it even in this season. He was a lot hesitant earlier in the season, but the last, I would say, 4 games, the wide receivers aren't having to wait for anything. The ball, as soon as they're out of their breaks, that ball is on them. And he likes to throw in that intermediate range. He did get picked off by Patrick Peterson, because I believe he got a little bit comfortable and the ball placement wasn't quite where it needed to be. And Patrick Peterson, being a savvy veteran, he read it the whole way, because Daniel Jones still has some issues with staring down players. Um, but I think if he leads that pass a little bit further in front, I think Hodgins gets a chance to get that. But Patrick Peterson made a great play. But you're absolutely right. It's all about the coaching, and I do see the improvements even through his progressions. He in his pocket awareness. I think a lot of that has improved, and I think I said with good coaching, when you have somebody that actually believes in you and encourages you, and you can tap into that talent that you have and get the best out of you. I think that's what we're getting with Daniel Jones, and still a lot of people are still uncertain with him. But what better way than in the playoffs to prove that you belong as a quarterback for the New York Giants' future?
Well, yeah, that leads me right into my next question. Thank you for setting that up very nicely. Is he the long-term answer, and is that question dependent on what happens this postseason for the Giants? If you guys go one and done, like let's say the Vikings beat you guys, Daniel Jones, maybe he throws a game losing interception or something, or has a fumble or something, whatever, you guys lose the game. Do you think that makes the decision pretty easy for the Giants? Say, okay, we're done. We're moving on. We're going to go try and get our franchise quarterback in this draft, or potentially go sign somebody like a Derek Carr, maybe. Just a name that I know will probably be available. But or do you feel like his future is pretty set in stone, regardless of what happens this postseason?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. And as far as Derek Carr, I think he's a better fit for the Jets.
For the Jets, okay.
I like him with the Jets. Good receivers there, good running game, solid
Yeah.
offensive line. I think Derek Carr is a good fit there. But
they just released their offensive coordinator, fired him, which I thought was
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, that's what they. That's a whole nother conversation with Zach Wilson.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to open a can of beer for that one, I think.
Yeah, but for Daniel Jones, it's funny that you asked that. I think that regardless of what happens in these playoffs, they still have him in the plans for the future. I think his performance in the playoffs determines how long of a deal he gets. So right now we're sitting in a spot where we're probably going to be picking in the mid to late, in the mid 20s. That's where we're at pretty much right now. Um, and it doesn't guarantee that you can get a quarterback in that position, in that draft position. But also, do you want to start over again from scratch when you have a quarterback that's good enough to get you in the playoffs and potentially can take the next step? That's the main thing. And I think the big the divide between Giants fans is he's already been here for 4 years. I don't think he can get any better. Let's just move on. And then the other half will be like, well, he's never had the weapons. He finally has a coach that believes in him, and he's looking pretty good now. So that's where it's pretty. And I'm really stuck in between the middle because I'm thinking because they already showed interest in possibly re-signing him to a multi-year deal. But I think the money and the years determine on what this playoff run looks like and how he looks in this game. And if we're able to actually beat you guys, how he looks, just in the playoffs altogether. Because we remember Eli Manning, his regular season, it wasn't really much. But then he'll get into those playoff runs and just have a great run in the playoffs. And, we won 2 Super Bowls because of it. So we'll see what happens. But that's what I think it is. I think he's back regardless. But his success in the playoffs determines how long and the money.
Because I think we talked last time. If you get into that $25 million a year range for Daniel Jones, you're kind of at that point where you're probably like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I might want to just check and see what we can come up with as an alternative plan, whether that's elsewhere in free agency or, as we mentioned, drafting. I will say the nice thing about this quarterback class, it seems as if this quarterback class is very, very filled up. Like there's a lot of guys that
surprisingly
could potentially come in and be a decent starter. And, maybe we have a couple Hall of Famers sitting in there. Who knows? Obviously, the final tale will not be written until the end of their careers. So I think it's definitely an interesting question. I'm sure as a Giants fan, you're probably wishing, man, if we only had Brian Daboll like 2 years ago, we could have had a better idea of what Daniel Jones could be underneath of Brian Daboll.
The funny thing is, Joe Judge actually wanted Brian Daboll as his OC when we hired him.
Oh, really?
And
okay.
the Bills blocked us from being able to interview him. And at that time, I really didn't know much about Daboll, and also at that time, Josh Allen didn't really hit his stride yet because it was still some question marks about Josh Allen. And actually, that 2020 season is where he took off. It was that third season for him. So, for me, I would like to take the writing on the wall. First year with Brian Daboll, we get a playoff berth. Daniel Jones is looking good. Sky's the limit. That's the optimist side of me. But, the pessimist side is like, okay, we've seen flashes before. And is this just going to be a flash or is this the real thing that I'm staring at? But, yeah.
Yeah. And I think, it's interesting to talk about the Giants offense this offseason because you literally are going to be making the Giants, I should say, are going to be making some very huge decisions in regards to what they are going to be doing as an offense, because we know that the lack of weapons with wide receivers, we've talked about that. We've seen that play out in some of these games, which would that's one reason why I don't think the Giants can go very far is based on how few the weapons are that they have, and when they do get open, they dropped passes like they did against Minnesota.
Richie James.
So, but where do you think the Giants go towards this offseason? Do you think they kind of take that Bills approach where they kind of go running back by committee and don't really sign a big name running back? Or do you think Barkley is going to stay with the Giants and they're going to pay him what he's worth?
Yeah, it's hard to say, and that's the question. What is Saquon Barkley worth? So he has 1,300 yards rushing this year, but he's only gone over 100 yards in a game 4 times. So there's a lot of games where he's only had 50 yards, 60 yards, and stuff like that. And then for a guy that want top of the line money, you want to see a little bit more consistency, and of course, running backs. They're too dependent on the offensive line. That's another place where we need to fix things. So for Saquon Barkley, it's a different discussion for me. It's more like, can we get him for the right price rather than can we pay him what he's actually worth? Because in my opinion, if he's asking for Christian McCaffrey type of money, I don't think he gets that because we just can't afford that, especially with trying to re-sign Jones. And if I had to pick between the two, I'm probably would lean towards Daniel Jones over Saquon Barkley. And I know some people might kill me for that. But it's just how important the quarterback position is, and then also I've seen Saquon Barkley be his best his rookie of the year. The numbers over 2,000 yards all purpose, and we still lost week after week after week. So it goes to show you just the importance of having that quarterback over, that running back. So if I was forced to pick between the two, it would be Daniel Jones. But how we attack this off season, I think we need to shore up the offensive line too, possibly in free agency. I actually like your center, your first string, your first string center.
Garrett Bradbury,
Despite, and I believe he's going to be a free agent this year too. Are you guys locking him up, or do you see that he might be testing free agency?
I think they want to keep him, but I think there will come a point where the Vikings, if they get to a certain price point, where the Vikings are like, okay, we'll let you go, because I think I think they like him, but I don't think they love him. If that makes sense. So
Oh, it makes
I
absolute sense.
yeah, I think it's okay. We'll pay you if it's only this much, but if you're gonna ask for that much, we're
Yeah.
moving on to somebody different in the draft, or we're gonna sign somebody, or we're gonna, who knows, maybe roll with Chris Reed, who is the third string center, which I'm sure they wouldn't probably do. Reed maybe would be the backup next year, um, but yeah, no, Garrett Bradbury is going to be a free agent. I think the big thing with Garrett Bradbury is this back issue that he's got right now. Is that going to be a long term thing? You know, I don't think you meet too many people that used to have bad back problems. So it usually lingers on, and especially with the
Yeah.
offensive line position where you are constantly moving that back, and it's,
Hmm.
you know, it's, yeah, I would imagine that it's not an injury that
A
goes
lot of
away
wear and
very
tear.
quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it could be a long term effect, unfortunately, because he's been having such a really, he's been having the breakout season, really, which
I know.
I think a lot of Viking fans at the beginning of the season, we were ready to have him be gone. We were ready to bring in JC Treader off the street and say, hey, let's get this guy in here. Garrett Bradbury's terrible, and Bradbury's showed out to be pretty good. I mean, he's still, I wouldn't say a top 10 center, but he's definitely proven to be an average center, I would say, this
Okay.
season.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, like I said, I've been looking because John Feliciano's our starting center. And this is his first year actually starting as a center. You know, he was a guard his whole career, and this guy's 30 years old. So, you know, his first season playing center, and there was some struggle there. He's way better in the run than he is in pass sets. So yeah, I'm ready to move on from Feliciano. He's only here for a 1 year deal, and I doubt that we resign him. So, you know, I was looking at Bradbury as a possible target. But like you said, if his back is where it is, and then also the money doesn't fit, then maybe we just go ahead and draft a guy instead. But yeah, like I said, I've been watching you guys a lot lately. Even when I knew it was going to be locked in that we would play you guys, I went and watched a couple different games, and I had some questions for you actually as far as your offense goes. Because
yeah.
Osborne had a quiet game against us. I don't think that happens again. Um, there's a lot of focus on Justin Jefferson, and of course, like I said, we are always weak covering the tight end. So T.J. Hawkinson opened a lot of eyes for a lot of Giants fans. The last time we played, and you know, I knew about Hawkinson when he was with the Lions, but I didn't know that he was still that type of guy. And I think he's actually playing better for you guys than he did for the Lions. You know,
Yeah.
so that's my main focus is those two guys. Like I said, Justin Jefferson is Justin Jefferson, but how can you contain Hawkinson and then Osborne with so much attention going to Jefferson? What is Osborne going to do this time different from what he did last time? Because I'm pretty sure they're trying to scheme up some stuff for him going into this game. I was also happy that we were able to slow down Dalvin Cook, but can you also do that against? Because you guys are explosive, man. You guys are explosive when you want to be. And I never understood in some of those games, you know, when you lost big, you know, what happens to the offense. But you guys can score points in bunches, and that always scares me because we're not that we can't win a shootout. I'll just leave that there. Our game is
I don't
pretty much
know against the Vikings defense.
well. You know what? I will have to say thank you to you guys, even though you guys picked off Daniel Jones. You gave him a little bit of his swagger, you know, because since that game, you know, he's been pretty hot, you know, moving the ball around. But yeah, still, you guys can put up points. We like to do long drives, eat up the clock, and that's our game plan for explosive offenses. Is trying to keep them on the sideline as much as possible.
Yeah, I think you guys are going to have a better plan for T.J. Hawkinson this time. I
I
think
hope so. You
I
better.
think having Xavier McKinney back is huge for that.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see some of McKinney um, over the top on Jefferson a little bit, but also a little bit maybe with trying to get Hawkinson. He might go back and forth between those two every now and then. I don't know,
Mm.
but it's that's an interesting matchup. I think KJ Osborne could very well have a big game because I think if the Giants want to focus on those two guys, I guess I love KJ Osborne, but
Mhm.
my thought is if I'm the Giants, I would take my chances on KJ Osborne, and I would
Absolutely.
probably try and take away Hawkinson and Jefferson. Like that would
I
be
agree.
probably my two main focuses. And you can say what you want about Dalvin Cook. He's had a great career in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. But one stat that I heard actually on a show that I listened to, the Locked On, the Minnesota Football Party on the Locked On Minnesota
Yeah.
podcast network thing. So Luke Inman brought up a stat that Dalvin Cook leads the league in 0-yard rushes or fewer or less yardage. So he
wow.
is getting bottled up frequently in the backfield or at the line of scrimmage. And so even though he's had some big runs at times this season, some chunk runs, but I think if you looked at the overall games for the most part, he's been pretty underwhelming. And I think part of it maybe is due to injury. I think part of it is due to getting older. And people forget, like, he's been the workhorse for the Vikings offense for the last several seasons under Mike Zimmer previously, who just loved to run the ball. He was getting 25, 30, sometimes more carries a game. That takes a toll on a running back. And then running back is one of those positions, probably the top three positions that get injured the most just because of all the blows that they take on a daily basis every time they get the ball. So I think the Vikings, it's going to be an interesting offseason for them as well, talking about the running back position, because I could see them very well taking a new approach in regards to the running back. And
Is he making a
I
lot of
hope they
money?
do. What's that?
Is Cook making a lot of money coming up, or is he still on the contract
Yeah.
this year?
Yeah, so the Vikings could get out of his contract this year, and he is next year, if the Vikings keep him, his contract is not going to be great. So he signed a 5-year, $63 million extension in 2020, and they have a potential out after this season that would get them out of the remaining 3 years that he has on his deal.
Okay.
And it would cost them $6 million in dead cap, but they would be free of $27.2 million if they were able to, over the next 3 years. So I would say he's probably done with the Vikings.
Absolutely.
Yeah, unless he restructures. Or somebody wants to pick him up. I mean, we saw the market for Christian McCaffrey, and I would say Christian McCaffrey is probably a better running back overall athlete, maybe even than Dalvin Cook, just based on the fact that he's able to go in the slot. But also, Dalvin Cook's been in the slot a few times this year, so maybe there's another offensive genius out there that would like to take a look at Dalvin Cook and maybe move him around in the slot a little bit too. So maybe if they could get it like a fourth, maybe a third round pick out of him, maybe more, I don't know, but I would be very intrigued just to see if you can get out of that contract even with a trade. If not, I think there's a good chance the Vikings cut bait and move on to a younger person or two. I know they have a couple of guys in the building already with Kene Wongwu and Ty Chandler, who they really liked coming out of the draft.
You guys had Chandler. Wow.
Yeah. Yep. Wow. So, and then you have Alexander Madison, who's kind of been blocking Chandler as getting some second team reps. So, I think Madison and Cook are probably both gone this offseason, which is going to be interesting to see the Vikings take a new approach on the running back situation. But in regards to other matchups, I think if the Vikings are going to have to get other players involved, like you said, that I think Osborne is probably going to have a big game. Maybe even Dalvin. That's one guy that I'd like to see have a good game. And somebody that might not get on the field much, but I've been impressed with over the last couple of weeks is Jalen Naylor, another rookie that they got in the fifth round last year, I think it was. And he's had some it was garbage time, but he's had some
Mhm.
nice catches. And I think maybe if you put him in at that third or fourth wide receiver role, maybe he could do some damage because Adam Thielen, as much as I loved Adam Thielen and his time in Minnesota, I think he's about cooked as well with his he just can't get separation anymore. So
Yeah,
that's a good thing for you guys, I would guess.
yeah. I noticed him on the tape in some of the games I've watched. Yeah, yeah. He had a good run. So Thielen had a good run.
Yep.
He was able to use his length and he had a good set of hands too as far as being able to get
Oh yeah.
separation and could also catch the ball very very well.
And
But
he
yeah,
hasn't lost his hands, you know. He
yeah,
hasn't
no,
lost his
absolutely.
hands.
Yeah,
He just can't separate anymore. Yep.
yeah. That's the thing, and yeah, you can see it. I mean, you can see it. But like I said, he had a very good run because there was a point in time where he was one of those top receivers too. When him and Diggs were the
Yeah.
1-2,
Oh yeah. Yep.
man, yep. And you can actually say he was probably the number one to Diggs number two at one point. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe early on. I think
early on.
towards the
Yep.
last couple of years, Diggs probably
Oh yeah.
usurped him. But
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's definitely interesting. I'm also interested to see if there's any changes that the Vikings defense makes from the last time that we played you guys, and just from the regular season in general, because the Vikings defense we know has been atrocious for most of the year. But when they've been able to win games is when the defense comes up with an interception. They come up with a fumble recovery. They come up with a big sack and a big moment to force a punt to allow the offense to go down and get the game-winning drive, you know? So those have been the key things that the Vikings have been able to do well, but I have a feeling that that luck is going to run out at some point. Like they're not necessarily going to get the key sack and the key moment. So can they actually sustain getting stops without getting the big turnover, without getting the big sack? Can they just hold up in coverage, tackle well? And that's something that has been a struggle for them
Yeah.
this season. So um, I'm not really too worried about your receivers, even though they might have some yards and whatever. But I don't think I can see your receivers having like this monstrous day. I think Daniel Bellinger could have another nice day. I can't remember what he had last time, but could see him having a nice day. And I think
He had a fumble. I know
Saquon
that
could,
much.
yeah, Saquon could definitely have a nice day.
That's the key right there.
Maybe they decide to get him going in the pass game a little bit too, which I think would be huge for you guys.
Yeah, I think that you hit it right on the head there. Regardless of how good Daniel Jones is doing throwing the ball, it still all revolves around Saquon Barkley in that offensive line. If we're able to run the ball successfully, that's the key. That's what keeps the clock running. That's what keeps those explosive offenses like yours off of the field. If we can continue to get first downs and bunches and drain the clock. So for me, a perfect drive from the New York Giants is 11 plays, 11 to 13 plays. 75 yards and getting a touchdown and running about 7 minutes off the clock. That's how the Giants have been winning games this year. Because I said we don't have we don't have that one receiver, that one name. Because when you look down at the list of Giants receivers, you're like, who is this? Who's that? They're not household names,
Yep.
but they make plays. They have average, stats. But
Mhm.
it's all about just that marriage between running the ball and passing the ball and being successful and moving the sticks. And I think that's what the big deal is about the Giants, especially when we're talking about playoff ball. You have to be able to run the ball. A lot of these teams. I mean, unless you're Kansas City, or somewhere
Yeah.
you just it doesn't
Or
matter. You
Buffalo
just
apparently.
yeah, and you just throw the ball. Yeah,
Even
who
though
cares
Josh
about running
Allen
backs?
does that pretty much, so
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But all of us other teams out there, you have to get physical. It's all about the trenches and things like that. And I think that's where this game is going to count the most. I do like my matchup of our defensive line versus your offensive line with Dexter Lawrence. We've been waiting for Leonard Williams to have one
he's
of those
back,
games
right?
this year. He's back. Yeah, he's back. He's nursing that neck injury, but we rested him last week. So he is going to play this week, but we've been waiting all year for a game from Leonard Williams. We haven't gotten that yet. Obviously, Dexter Lawrence has been a monster this season. ended up
Yeah,
being all pro. But
phenomenal.
he's the key. Leonard Williams, I think, is the key because you can't double team Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams. And if Leonard Williams decides that he's going to be that high paid defensive end slash tackle, I think that's where where it counts. This especially in this game because we have to get to Kirk Cousins as fast as possible.
Yeah. Yep.
That's
And that's
fast
what I'm
and
worried
often.
about. And
Yeah.
yeah, and that's what I'm worried about. I think the fact that you have Williams back healthy or pretty healthy, it seems,
Mm.
for this game, I think that allows Dexter Lawrence to not maybe, like you said, engulf many of those double teams. And when you have Ed Ingram, who has been one of the worst, not just guards, one of the worst offensive linemen in the league this year. Now, I'm not saying he couldn't develop into being a nice player. I
Mhm.
think he's got the potential to do that, but my goodness, he has just been brutally bad at times, and I really worry about that matchup on Sunday, whether it's Lawrence or Williams going against Ed Ingram. I think the Vikings could find trouble there, and
Mhm.
then not only you have that, but then as I mentioned, you got Ojulari coming back, you got Kayvon Thibodeau
Yeah.
coming back. Man, that defensive line, like that should give you guys, and the developing offensive line that seems to be improving. Like it seems like those two things are pretty well in place for you guys moving forward, which I
Yeah.
would be very excited about if I were you guys.
I'm absolutely excited, and I said it earlier. I said we're getting healthy at the right time, and the defense is
Yep.
starting to play well at the right time. It started with that Washington game, and even though we lost against you guys, I think we got enough pressure, and we were able to get to Kirk Cousins a few times. I remember that one play he kind of threw up that prayer to
Oh, there was
Justin
a couple of
Jefferson.
them. Yeah, there was a
you
couple
know,
of them that you guys nearly picked.
Yeah, and but that one that's I think it was the second one because he had just missed Justin Jefferson. It looked like he threw more to a spot than to Justin Jefferson, and
Yeah.
he underthrew him, and then he went right back to it later in the game, and Justin Jefferson just made a hell of a play.
Oh
And
man,
yeah,
that
yeah,
that was the difference in the game. Obviously, the next play too, but
yeah,
that
yeah,
third down could have been the difference between you guys winning and us winning because
yeah,
if we don't get that, we're punting, and who knows what
yeah.
Daniel Jones would have been able to come up with our, like I said, with our defense, which I'm not very confident in.
Mm.
You guys could have gone down the field in a couple of plays and gotten a field goal yourselves. So I was very, or went and won it in overtime or something. But
Yeah.
I was at that third down. I was like, oh boy. I saw the pressure coming. I was like, oh well, here we go
And
again.
he sent
Back
everybody
to the
to wait.
yeah. And all of a sudden, he just throws this up, and when I saw Jefferson where he was when he threw that, I was like, there's no way he's catching this. And he just goes
Yeah,
out and grabs it. It was like, what is going on?
yeah.
Like Jefferson, like I think we take it for granted sometimes how good he is, but man, when he makes game-changing plays like that, it's just like this
And
guy, pay him a ransom, pay him everything, give him the franchise.
and that's funny, yeah, because he's on that rookie deal. I can't
Yep.
imagine what he's going to cost because he's going to set the
Oh
market
man.
when he's
Yeah.
up. Who
Yep, and
knows
then
what?
Jamar will probably overtake him the next year.
Yep. You know how it goes. Yep. You know
Yep,
how it goes.
yep.
And then what next
So,
thing you know, we're paying wide receivers $30 million a
yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Hopefully the
Yep.
cap gets up to 300 soon.
Yeah, no
Man.
kidding. No kidding.
Oh,
We're could definitely use it. But well, I think I mean we could go on for a long time, Dash. I think we both could talk football for quite a while, but
yeah.
um let's get into our game predictions here. Um I'm going to let you go ahead and go first here.
Okay, so you know what? I'm actually gonna this is my first time actually thinking about the prediction. I thought about us winning. And I thought about the game strategy, but I never thought of prediction. So this is the first time I'm really thinking about it. And that's an exciting thing. I think this game is going to be exciting. You know what? Um, I will flip the score from the last one. I think we win 27-24 by a field goal. I'll
All
go with that
right.
for right now. Put me on the spot. I haven't got a real chance to think about it yet, but I like that.
Yeah, I knew you were going to pick the Giants, not because I think you're a
It's the
homer, but
playoffs.
because I
It's the
saw your
playoffs.
Super Bowl video earlier.
Oh man, don't kill me
So
for that.
no, hey, we all have dreams, right?
Absolutely, that's what it is.
And the Vikings are going to crush that dream on Sunday. I'm sorry to tell you, but I do think the Vikings win. I will say I will not be shocked if they lose though, because like I said, those matchups that I mentioned, some of those key defensive players coming back, and um, the offense, like any offense with a pulse, pretty much scares me with the Vikings defense these days.
Yeah.
So I think just with that does scare me enough, but I'm still going to take the Vikings 31-27.
Oof. I like it. I like it.
Another close
I,
game because I think that's
hey, you
just
know
the way
what?
it is with the Vikings. So,
Last year's playoffs were exciting, all of the games. So if that, like
yeah.
I said, a close game like that, 31-27, or like I said, 27-24, that's going to be an exciting game, and that's all you can ask for right now, too.
Yeah. And by the way, this is Kirk Cousins' first home playoff game as a Viking. So,
Wow. Okay.
never has played a home playoff game with the Vikings. Of course, he's only been in the playoffs one other time as a Vikings quarterback, I think, or maybe twice. But yeah, it's been a minute, so hopefully he can show out.
You know,
One thing I will say, the primetime thing with Kirk Cousins, but also the 3:30 window with Kirk Cousins is a concern, as we've seen with the Jim Nantz Tony Romo games this year.
oh
Absolute
man.
absolutely blitzed by the Packers and the Cowboys in that 3:40 window, but it's not on CBS, so maybe there's a chance.
Okay. I had a question for you. You know what? I didn't know what Skol meant the first time. I looked it up, realized what it meant. I think that's pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. Vikings cheer. Yeah.
Cheers. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I think that's pretty cool. Um, just thinking about I thought we were playing on CBS, but I like Tony Romo. I think he's pretty good as a analyst and the way
I
he
like
calls
him when he's
games.
not doing Vikings games.
Okay. Okay.
No, I do think I think people get upset at him when he's when he's making not necessarily fun of the Vikings, but he's pointing out flaws. And then
Yeah.
it's like, oh no, he's pointing out flaws. Well, when you're down by 40 points, what do you expect?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's the one thing. Like I'm a broadcaster, so I get the idea of like, well, what am I supposed to say? They are a great team. They're doing great today. At least they tried. We all
Yeah.
want this
Yeah.
participation trophy society, I think, is what we've become, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, at least we tried. And
Now,
that's
and
why the Vikings don't have a Lombardi trophy.
yeah, that's rough too. One thing I did want to say is I've heard and I didn't like it. I guess the story's going around that Leonard Williams had said something about the crowd being quiet last time, and he thought it was going to be a lot louder. And you
Oh,
guys
really?
making it. And I saw some clips from the local news, and they were interviewing some of the Vikings players while they were at the in the locker room, and they were
Hmm.
talking about that. And I was like, please don't give these guys any more fuel, or that fan base any more fuel, because we know how loud domes can get. So I'm
Yeah.
like, please stop. Please don't just
Well,
say anything to
I
fire
will
these guys up
say
anymore.
for Leonard Williams, I don't know if he was talking about for the whole game or just when he was on the field, but
Mm,
the defense, when the Giants defense is on the field, the Vikings offense is at work. So, they
you
put
guys keep
that
quiet.
sign up like be
Hmm.
quiet.
Makes sense.
So
Makes
and
sense.
then when the Giants are on the offensive side, then
You guys get
it's
loud.
time to
Makes
make your
sense.
noise. So
That makes absolute
maybe he
sense.
was talking about when the Giants defense was on the field, or maybe he was talking about the whole game. But
I
I've
wish they would have explained it like that, because the way you
yeah,
explained it made this comment a lot nicer
yeah,
than I guess the way they're taking it.
but he could be just saying in general. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I couldn't
But
tell from watching it.
fuel to the fire. But we saw how that worked out for Justin Jefferson when Jair Alexander kind of dissed him a little
Oh my
bit,
gosh,
and
yeah,
that didn't work out so well
yeah.
for JJ. But we'll just avoid that conversation
Oh
and
man,
move on. Final statements we usually do here, Dash. Any final things you want to mention about the game or the NFL playoffs or anything like that?
Yeah, man, I can go on. Like you said before, we could talk ball all game, but I would just like to say this first. Thank you for having me again. I enjoyed, this conversation that we're having. Best of luck,
Yep.
and then also best of health too, man. Let these play. The best thing is these guys staying healthy,
Yep.
and
Yep.
being able to have a
Absolutely.
competitive game, a physical game, but also a safe game at the end of the day. So like I said, best of luck, best of health, for your team this week, and also you, man. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And I'll give my final statement and then give you a chance to talk about your channel. But yeah, I agree. After what happened to Damar Hamlin, I think it all made us realize that this is more than a game, for one, and for two, these players are not just players; they're human beings, and they they deserve to be treated as such. And I think too many
Absolutely.
times we can sit here and nitpick about their performance and stuff, and we enjoy that. They get
Hmm.
paid a lot of money, but at the end of the day, they're still human beings as much as we are. And I think that whole Damar Hamlin situation kind of helped us get a little bit of a dose of reality, and kind of
Yeah,
united us a
absolutely.
little bit, as much as we didn't want that to happen. Maybe it was a good thing in a way, to be able to make us reflect on things a little bit more. But I I agree with that. And then yeah, I think this is a very big game for the Vikings. If they go out there and they lose to this Giants team, I'm not saying that this Giants team is not capable of winning, because like I said, I wouldn't be
Hmm.
surprised if the Giants did win. But I think the Vikings are going to have a very long off season if they lose this first round game. I think, I mean, it's going to probably be a long off season anyway, but I think this game could possibly be even more even more heavy on what they do in this off season. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah,
It's a very big matchup, and
we're in
possibly the
similar
matchup of the
situations.
weekend.
I think so. I think so. Like I said, I think it's as far as the franchises go. I mean, obviously your record's better than our record, but as far as you know, the just the decisions that have to be made this off season, you guys have contract and deals that you got to look into, coaching, and things like. Well, we both have rookie head. O'Connell, this is
Yep.
rookie year too, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
rookie head coaches and rookie GMs. So we know they want to put their imprint on this team. Getting out of the last regimes. So yeah, I think
Mhm.
we're in a similar spot where whoever wins this game, fantastic. You keep on trucking, keep trying to build the story. But whoever loses really has to look at themselves in the mirror and say, how can we get better? And not just because we lost a playoff game, just in general, just to compete in the division and things like that. So yeah, I mean, well, you
Yep.
guys won your division, but
Yep. Yep.
for the future, absolutely.
Yep. Well, Dash, go ahead and tell our viewers how they can consume your content.
Okay, yeah, it's very easy. It's Big Dash Knows on all social media platforms. And if you want to hear a good playoff and Super Bowl scenario, I did put out a video that you mentioned, Carson. Go ahead and give that a watch. And yeah, you guys have a great one. And again, thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, appreciate you coming on, and yes, good luck to your squad as well. Even though I'll be cheering hard for the Vikings, and I'm sure most people that consume this podcast will, hopefully.
Absolutely.
But if there are a few that don't, that's okay too. So, but anyways, again, thanks Dash for joining, and as always, Skol.